Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu5, and today I want to talk about comparisons. What brought up this video concept, I've done a video series similar to this. Seems like anytime I compare something that people feel should not be compared, they throw a hissy fit. The first time this happened was when I compared a tomahawk to a hatchet, and they were like, you can't compare a tomahawk to the hatchet, they're too different, even though they're both one-handed axes. And then the second time this happened was when I was comparing a kukri machete versus a Nepalese Himalayan imports kukri. And that really stirred the pot in a very aggressive way. And I realized that when you get onto subject matter such as kukris, karambits, katanas, sometimes to a lesser extent buoys, that people get very passionate about it and they think that this is the perfect weapon and nothing can ever top it. But I want to talk about why I compare some of these things that are not exact duplicates of each other, but they're similar. And someone used the example, well, that's not comparing a grape to a banana. They're both sweet, but it ends right there. No, it doesn't. That's the beautiful thing. It does not end there. If we were going to compare a grape and a banana, we can compare vitamin C levels, mineral levels, other vitamins, calories, fats, sugar. There's a lot more to it than just the taste, the sweetness, which are very different from each other. And they're both fruits. And we can, so there's a lot of things we can compare with two things that are in the same family, but are very, very different. Now, that was one example that someone gave me, and that was my counter to that example. Well, that's a counter I just came up with. But let's think of another comparison. What if I were to compare the 25 ACP to the 45 ACP? Now, it would be a lot more fair to compare a 9mm to a 45, or a 25 to a 22, or 32. But what if I were to compare a 25 ACP to a 45 ACP? Surely you're thinking to yourself, he's not going to compare these two, and why would you? Well, it's very important. We as reviewers, educators, inventors, I'm not calling myself all of those things, by the way. I'm just saying the groups of people who are putting information out there that should be taken seriously. If we don't ask these questions of how these compare, then we won't know what will perform better in a life and death situation. Now, obviously, the 45 ACP is more powerful, but that's not the only aspect that we're comparing. When we're comparing things, it's not just taste, as in the fruit, banana, and grape. We're comparing other things as well. So what do the 25 and the 45 ACP have in common? Well, they're both centerfire. They're both made by Colt. Or actually, I think of John Browning. They're both Colt automatic pistols, but they were designed by John Browning. And they're both defensive rounds, or offensive rounds, depending on what you have going on that day. But we need to compare them to realize what's better for the individual. Now, you'll have people who'll say, well, the 25 is highly underrated, that I know people who's used it on 3 different occasions and came out victorious. It's easy to carry. There's no reason to leave it at home. You can carry it, to the beach, in a swimsuit, depending on what swimsuit you're wearing, of course. You can carry it in formal occasions in a tuxedo. There's a lot of advantages to the 25 in that aspect, the carry aspect. But what about the 45 ACP? Well, before polymer pistols and the XDS and others like it, the 45 was pretty much relegated to the 1911. And 1911s, depending on your body type and what you're wearing, are very hard to conceal. I'm not saying they're impossible to conceal. I'm not saying that they're necessarily difficult to conceal. But comparably, this is why we compare. The 45 is a lot more difficult to conceal than the 25 ACP. What's the trade-off? Well, you got stopping power. I'm refraining from using the word knockdown power. That's a southern term, and other people use it, but people tend to get offended by knockdown power. But stopping power, you get stopping power with the 45 ACP. What's another comparison we can make between the two rounds? Price of shooting, price of training. 25s are not that cheap, believe it or not. It's not a very common round compared to the 45 ACP, but 45 ACPs, that's a lot of lead, a lot of brass, a lot of gunpowder. They're not the cheapest things to shoot either, but you got recoil. What's the recoil like? Am I going to be able to shoot this 100 rounds in and be comfortable with it? Well, some people can shoot a 1911 all day and be perfectly fine with it, but then again, some women can't handle a 45. 25s, I don't care how big you are, you can shoot a 25 all day, and other than boredom, you'll be able to do it all day. So it's very important that we make these comparisons. Even though they might sound ridiculous on the surface, the comparisons are very valid. I made a comment in the last video series I made on this topic that you can compare things that are completely different, that are not related, other than their impact on humanity, and that is the deaths of gun deaths from gun violence and drunk driving deaths. You can compare them. You compare which ones has a higher mortality rate. So yeah, you can compare just about anything you want to. The apples and oranges. People make that argument, that complain all the time. Oh, you're comparing apples to oranges. Well, the very fact that you said apples to oranges means you're comparing them. So back to the kukri machete and the Himalayan imports kukri. I don't want to say real kukri, and the whole point of that video was that I hate the term kukri-like object. It's a fallacy. If it's has the kukri profile and it chops, it's a kukri. No matter if it's a 1/4 inch thick or, standard thickness. So the kukri machete and the, let's call it the XL kukri at the moment, I made the comparison for a few reasons. One, Himalayan kukris, and it's possible, I haven't tried I think it's Trio or Tio. I can't remember. There was a kukri company that starts with a T, Toro? I can't remember. But they're supposed to be the best kukris on the market as far as Nepalese kukris. I got the second best kukri on the market, and that is the Himalayan imports. But the Himalayan imports are like that thick at the spine, and not much thinner at the edge. The edge bevel's pretty thick. And some people are like, how can you compare this $20 machete that's made out of God knows what steel? By the way, it's 1055. I think some of the other kukris are made out of... No, it's 1055. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, 1055, we know what steel it's made out of. It's not a mystery steel. But how can you compare a mass-produced kukri machete that is made out of God knows what steel, even though we know what it is, to a forged kukri from Nepal? Cost over $100. I think it's like $150 or something like that. Made by artisans, and has the proud tradition of Nepal. Well, it's very simple. You take one kukri, you put it against another kukri, and you see which one does better. Now, let's state some things about the Nepalese kukris. This is true with Himalayan imports. They're artisan blades, and I don't have my artisan patata, but just because the artisan knife is an artisan knife, or just because the knife is an artisan knife, a handcrafted knife, doesn't mean it's a good knife. I got a patata, handmade in Sardinia, and it crapped out on me. It has no blade retention in the handle. It's just swings side by side. It's still functional. You can open it and it'll stay open, but it won't stay shut. That's dangerous in the pocket. But anyways, just because something is custom or an artisan blade doesn't mean that it's a superior blade. But let's look at the Himalayan imports. Handcrafted sheath, handcrafted blade is made by a blacksmith, and pretty much, well, I know that the Kukri House ones are almost sweatshop conditions, but made by a guy hammering it out on a sledgehammer in flip-flops. Hand engraved by the maker's trademark, or maker's mark. So he signs his work, he stands behind it. But something that y'all might not know is that they heat treat them with water. They quench them in water. Quenching in water normally isn't a good thing. Now, they don't just dip it in a vat of water. They use a teapot, and they pour the water on the edge so they can get a differential heat treat. So the spine is a lot softer than the hull, and on the edge. But, that's still heat treating what some might call a questionable steel. I am about 90% sure that it's 5160. It's leaf springs most of the time. Scavenged steel. They don't buy knife steel to make blades. They don't make their own steel. They get leaf springs. They go to India to get them. And I've seen the pictures. So we think it's 5160. I'm pretty confident it's 5160. 5160 likes to be heat treated in crude oil. Or maybe vegetable oil. Surely would do better than water. But yeah, they do heat treat them with water, so you don't get the best edge. You do get a differential heat treated edge, but you don't get the best edge. Keep in mind that as we're comparing the two kukris, one's quenched in a legitimate oil. One's made from a steel that we do know what it is and how it performs. We do know what is the elements in the steel. And one, we don't. The Kukri machete actually has grip. It has texturing. Well, they both have somewhat texturing. The Kukri machete has aggressive checkering on the grip. And it's made in South Africa, so people are not bragging about South Africa products, but it is made in Africa. The Kukri machete has a smooth handle. It has bumps on it, and you can hang on to it, but it's still smooth. If you get wet, bloody, it can fly out. Now, I think the big problem with the... I get more complaints on the Kukri video than I do on the Tomahawk hatchet video. I think the big complaint is not that I'm comparing the two, but the fact that the $20 machete is actually doing a better job than the $150 Kukri. And in this video, every time I get a complaint about a video, I rewatch the video. I make sure the video isn't making false claims. I make sure I'm not cursing in it, or I try to make sure that the video is unbiased and is correct. Sometimes I'll make a video and I'll be like, you know what? I screwed that video up. I'll make a response video. But in this video, I really didn't. And a lot of people complain that I swung the Kukri like a girl. And in the video, I say that I'm using the weight of the knife to judge the cutting capacity. And I did this with pretty much all of the cut tests. I'll use gravity. I'll use just a very mild snap cut where I'm not really muscling it. And the whole concept behind not using my muscles is I want to show the edge geometry and the cutting capacity of each individual blade. Now, I can very easily get either Kukri and chop through bamboo. What would that teach you? It teaches you nothing. It teaches you that both knives can chop through bamboo, but it doesn't show the difference of which one was easier to chop with or not. So I'm going to compare it like this. You can get a 22 and you can get a 45 ACP. Or we can go with the 25 ACP and 45 ACP for the sake of argument, because I made that comparison already. If I shoot ballistics gel that's 4 inches, 4-inch square by 2 inches thick, each one of them is going to pass through the ballistics gel, and we will learn nothing. We learn that both of them will go through the ballistics gel. But by increasing the thickness of the ballistics gel, we can see that the 45 that causes more trauma. We get different penetration levels with the two blades. So by increasing the thickness of the ballistics gel, we get a lot more information. We get more information, not just destruction. And that's the whole concept behind that video, was I wanted information, not destruction. So in this video, I do a simple, extend, and I do weight of the blade, chop through the pork loin, and the Himalayan kukri did good on the pork man, did good on the pork loin, but it did not do as good as the kukri machete. The kukri machete is thin, and it has less resistance to pass through any given cutting medium. The kukri from Nepal, it has a lot of momentum, it has a lot of power, a lot more power than the kukri machete, but it's fatter, so it's going to cause more resistance before going into the meat. But they both did good on the meat, and one did better on the meat. And then I did the snap cut and what I called a big cut, but I wasn't really using my muscles. And lo and behold, the kukri machete did better. It bit into the bamboo and stuck in it. Went about halfway through. To be fair, with the kukri machete, the Nepalese kukri, I got a bigger piece of bamboo because it was convenient. But after I did that, I was like, you know what? I want to get a more comparable size of bamboo to the other piece of bamboo. I found it, and I did several snap cuts. It didn't want to stick, and it just didn't do that well. I don't hate Nepalese kukris, but when I show a video, I'm not going to make excuses for a more expensive knife. My brother did his own independent testing of the kukri from Nepal, and he says, yeah, when you bring the power, when you really hit with it, if you swing it hard enough, it chops great. And I think at the end of the day, we need to think of the kukri video like this. It's like comparing a bushcraft axe to a splitting maul. They both do a particular job very well, but only one of them is versatile enough to do a broad range of jobs. One of them is sharp enough to carve with, one of them is sharp enough to do some small splitting, or medium-sized splitting. You can't split big logs with a bushcraft axe, depending on what your definition of big and what kind of wood it is. But both the bushcraft axe and the kukri machete can do carving tasks. They can both do chopping tasks. They both have a more acute point, so you can do piercing tasks with them. And both the setting maul, or the splitting maul, and the Himalayan kukri can bust crap up. They both can bust things open. They can split things open. They can crush things. They can split skulls. But to be fair, the bushcraft axe and the kukri machete can split skulls as well. So it's very interesting. I've gotten threats over something as stupid as a testing video, it's the very fact that I'm a reviewer means I have to compare things, and the very fact that I'm trying to educate people on different topics, I have to compare things, even if it's the difference between a orange and an Oreo. They're both sweet. They both have sugar in them. They both can cause cavities, but one of them has vitamin C and one of them doesn't. Comparing a grape and a banana, which the guy uses as an example, is a very valid comparison if you want to find out which one's healthier to eat. Healthier by the ounce, more calories, less sugar, more potassium, more vitamin C, antioxidants. It's not the comparison doesn't end at taste. It's a lot more broad than that, and that's what I want to get past you. I'm not just making this video towards him. I'm making it at everybody who has a problem with my comparison videos, which isn't a lot of people, but it's a good bit of people. Most people enjoy the videos. They enjoy them for entertainment content. They enjoy them for educational purposes, and they're like, I never thought of that. But some people they have a hard time coming to terms with the limitations of their chosen blade, and so I love buoys. I used to be a Japanese blade man. I used to love tantos and wakizashis and katanas, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're great, but a tanto has certain limitations that a buoy doesn't have, and a buoy has certain limitations that a tanto doesn't have. But I just, it's personal preference. It doesn't mean that tantos are bad or that buoys are bad. It doesn't mean that Himalayan kukris are bad. It just means that some things perform better than them. And to be a fair reviewer, to be an honest reviewer, I have to say the knife that has a razor edge and a thinner grind cuts better than a wedge, a thick wedge. If I were to say that the kukri from Nepal was a better knife because it's hand forged and heat treated with water and is an artisan knife, that would not be an honest review. Let me say this on the 9mm versus 45 ACP comparison / argument. You can do the math, and the bigger bullet is going to have a whole lot more momentum. That equals more power. But is that extra growth in power worth the recoil? Is it worth the lower count in ammunition in the gun? Is it worth the price difference? So there's nothing wrong with 9mm. There's nothing wrong with 45 ACP. But one is clearly more powerful than the other. But that's not where the comparison ends. The comparison doesn't end at power, just like the comparison doesn't end at taste with the banana and grape. So that's it. I'm a Satsu 5, and I'm out. Hope y'all have a great day.